Welcome to our leadership journey. We are Mike Cloutier and Peter Yanuszewski, and our goal is to interview people leaders at different stages of their career, from frontline managers to CEOs, and extract the leadership lessons they've learned on their journey to help you become a better leader. On this episode, we had the thrill of speaking with Erik Simins. Erik is the co-founder of two companies, MAGNUS, a recruitment firm specializing in healthcare, and Workwolf, a tech company that provides real-time verification of resume credentials using blockchain technology. In the brief time since its inception, Workwolf has received numerous awards, including first prize at VivaTechnology's Innovation Startup Challenge, as well as the Transformational Platform and Entrepreneurship Prize at the 2020 Enterprise Blockchain Awards. Erik's career has spanned fitness and nutrition, pharmaceuticals, recruitment, and if that doesn't sound impressive enough, he also had a professional music career. During our conversation, we spoke about the importance of adaptability among today's leaders, why you can't trust a resume when recruiting new employees, and the moment when Erik first heard his song on the radio.
So welcome back, everyone. This week on our leadership journey, we're thrilled to have Erik Simins with us. Erik, welcome.
Thank you. Nice to be here, guys.
Thanks for coming on. So, Erik, we will get to the Workwolf and we'll get to MAGNUS because I think you're doing some really, really exciting stuff, and I've got so many questions on those topics. Sure. But I just find your career trajectory utterly fascinating. When I look at those critical years, for me, that's my perspective as an outsider, between 2002 and 2006, you went from a commercial-run pharma to a recruitment agency. And I think at the same time, I think your music was sort of taking off, or at least that's when the videos I think were sort of starting. Talk to us about the convergence of those things, all the paths that were before you and how you chose to proceed forward.
Sure. So entrepreneurial endeavors I started them back in university. So I've always been kind of like a start, try, and if you fail, move on, or if it's a good enough opportunity and you fail, just keep trying. So I had a number of businesses. I had a personal training business in university, and that's what kind of helped pay for my university. And then I worked with a sport nutrition company during university, and worked there for maybe 6 months or so when I graduated. After I graduated, and then I got the opportunity to work in pharma. And back in those days, what a job it was, man. There was no really budgetary constraints in terms of how you spent your money. So there's a lot of golf and a lot of dinners. And for a kid just coming out of school, it was incredible money, and they treated you really well. But I found pretty quickly that it was not challenging for me. I'd see the reps in the physician offices just reading papers and waiting. And I'm like, I don't wait. Yeah. So I would ask them what they want for a coffee. I'd go back downstairs, bring a coffee up and bypass the reps, get dirty looks, but finish my calls in like 2 hours, right? And I'm like, this is too easy, and it's just not something that I'm prepared to wait for. Tried a bunch of stuff in pharma to kind of fast track the process, but my boss was like, and I love the guy who's actually a great first mentor. He said, basically, just be patient, Erik. And I'm like, that's not me. So I went to another opportunity to work for AT&T. So back then it was their data division, which is relatively new, software, good money. And started exploring my music a little bit more, and that took off. And so I kind of jumped headfirst into that and had to make a decision on whether or not I wanted to make money and buy real estate, because I was buying condos back in those days too. But my dad, my stepdad of all people, said, Erik, he always wanted to be an actor. So he's like, and I never did it, right? So he loved acting, but he just went to Mother Bell and stayed to Mother Bell for his whole career. And he said, you might regret it if you don't go balls out, so to speak. So I went all in, right? And I used all the money that I had acquired to kind of finance it initially, and then ended up getting a digital distribution deal back then, which is really important because getting on iTunes was impossible unless you had a label behind you. And had the opportunity to work with some really, really talented people, far more talented than me. And then realized, after a couple of years in the business, it was a really shady business. I came from an ethical business place, and It was just full of lies and false promises, and people were getting shelved in terms of the records that were much more talented than I was, and it wasn't my number one passion, right? And I didn't know what that was, but I knew it wasn't that, because I saw guys that were gigging and they were like 35 and 40 years old and making $200 a gig, and I'm like, that ain't for me, right? So I don't like it that much.
So Erik, so I'm a fellow musician, so this interests me very, very much. So during that period, what was like the pinnacle of that time? I know you mentioned there's some sort of darker undertones to that period, but in terms of like a pinnacle experience, that performance at a certain venue, or seeing your video, Much Music must have been pretty wild, right?
Yeah, it was hearing my song on the radio for the first time. That was probably one of the coolest parts, right? It was also working in. It's when you write music and you find the right producer and engineers to put it together, it's like having a baby. It's and you'll work all night to get it done, and when it comes out and it comes out right, it is something that just wasn't there before, right? It's this creation that can put goosebumps on your skin, or people can listen to and sing to and dance to, and it's this whole other level of coolness. But my song, I remember I was in my car, I had a shitty convertible. I think it was a Sebring convertible, but I liked having rag tops back then. And yeah, my song was in between, because I was an R&B musician, and it was in between Usher and then Parents' House, which was my single, and then 50 Cent was after, and I'm like, wow, this is awesome, man.
That's good company.
Yeah.
That's great.
It was great company. Yeah, and I was on medium rotation for a while, and shooting the video was also really cool. I did a show at David Cinnamond's house in Forest Hill. David Cinnamon had purchased the Argos, and my publicist was a friend of his wife, so I got to perform at the Argos celebration party when they won the cup. And David Cinnamon is such a gracious, very successful man. He said, who the hell are you? Like, why don't I know who you are? And I said, I don't know, man. He said, well, can I help you in any way? And I said, well, we need a place to shoot the video. So
that was the house.
That was the house. And I'm like,
that's awesome.
And I'm like, David, you got to star in it though. You got to be the dad, and you got to be the Parents' House. So he's in the video, and he was the dad. And then Nasri, who is now like world famous, he sang backup on Parents' House when we were recording in the studio together, and he's now the lead singer of Magic, the group Magic.
Wow.
And so I had the chance to work with some really, really talented people. So I wouldn't give it away, but it was certainly a tough industry. And I've always felt like I've been behind the ball. So putting 4 years into something like that, where you really get nothing out of it in terms of career, unless you want to be a musician, you get life experience, but I had to play catch up.
One of the things you just said right at the jump there was talking about having a mentor. Tell us a little bit about your mentor experience, not just in that case. I mean, start there, but a lot of the folks that we're speaking to and that are engaged in the podcast here are either mentees or mentors. So I'd love to hear a little bit about your experience in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, it's if there's unsolicited advice is something that I really do not appreciate, but I will say that for my experience is that mentors have been an incredible part of my journey. The giants that have done great things before us, we can learn from them, and remaining coachable, no matter your level of success, I think is super important. The most elite athletes, the most successful business professionals all have coaches. So I got lucky with my first manager in pharma, Paul Woodhouse, amazing human being, and also gave me this book to read, which was Stephen Covey's 7 Habits. He said, dude, read this. And if you practice it your entire life, you'll do great. Right? And some of the theories and concepts in there just clicked with me, and I was kind of hooked on Covey and the whole idea of, reading for improvement. So I've got a massive library of, I guess you call them self-improvement books, but really they're just like great books of people that have done great things. And if you read enough of those, what happens, you start to see that the ideas are just recycled, refabricated, but they all go back thousands of years, and they're just new spins on solid universal principles of truth that if you follow, you'll have a great life. So one of my first mentors was my uncle. I always looked up to him. He was a really successful exec in IBM, and I always idolized him. And he showed me a lot of. He's just a great human being and also a very successful businessman. And he's now my COO and co-founder at Workwolf. So that having the opportunity to work with his best friend and mentor as well, Dan Shea, who was the co-founder of Celestica, a small little company out of Canada that IPO'd for 1.8 billion. Dan was their co-founder and CTO, and they're my two co-founders in this business. So to have that caliber of mentorship, it's just, I'm really lucky. And we all know that luck happens when you just keep busting your ass until you get lucky. And so I think a lot of it has to do with how hard I've worked and my ability and willingness to take leadership and guidance, and being smart enough to discern what you should take and what you shouldn't.
Brilliant.
So since you mentioned Workwolf, I feel like we should just dive into it now, because I'm very, very eager to talk about this. So my understanding, and again, to be fair, you and I spoke, I think, a while back. So I got a bit of a preview as to what you guys were up to. But based on the research I've been doing, it seems like you're addressing the sort of catfishing, as the kids are calling it, that's happening in sort of hiring recruitment, right? So the fraudulent resumes, whatever. So maybe talk to us about the problem that exists and how Workwolf is aiming to solve that.
Cool. So the problem, identified the problem because I founded a staffing business in 2011, and the problem was in my face all the time with my client base. Then when I started researching the problem, there was really no solution out there, and it had to do with the quality of the information and data that employers were using to make critical filtering and hiring decisions. And we all know, having interviewed people several times, that people can be great interviewers and poor performers. There's a lot of them out there, particularly in pharma. And yeah, so to solve that problem, you have to improve the data source, which is the resume. And that's really hard to do. So you can't just say to people, be truthful on your resume. So you have to create some kind of ecosystem that will do that. And so the problem of resume fraud, as they call it, and fraud is a term that makes it seem like it's illegal. And I guess some cases it could be, but it really encompasses any type of embellishment or inaccuracy that's on a resume. And it happens in 60% of the resumes that are out there right now. So it's a massive problem, and it costs $660 billion a year to corporations with mishires. And so if we could solve that problem, we'd have a very successful company, but also I'd have a legacy that would be worth more than a couple songs on an album. It would be that we've improved the veracity of the hiring ecosystem, which is really our mission statement, which is unleash the power of truth. And this comes from Covey, right? Nothing is faster than the speed of trust. If two parties trust each other, things just get done faster. So that's kind of my belief behind and what keeps me going, sometimes 36 hours straight, and many sleepless nights, and lots of cash flow problems in startup, and believing in it enough when even some of my shareholders are just like, in 2018, we had a really rough patch where they're just like, close the doors, man. And I said, no effing way am I going to do this. It's too important, and I got a shot. And if somebody is going to do this, where they leverage the new technology and they innovate on the current innovation and make it into a commercial application where you can leverage this decentralization, this democratization of data, and then you can make it so that it has a better path and less friction by locking it up and making sure that it's not tampered with. Then change that access from a third party to the data owner, and the data owner can deploy information that remains truthful. And so that's what we built in this ecosystem, where we call it a digital work passport. And since our win at VivaTech in France, we've been having some very good discussions with Manpower Group, and we've gone through some due diligence now in terms of the security of our platform, and we're into the stage in October of building out our integration with the talent solutions platform and the experience platform, and will probably be white labeled by Q1 of next year and rolled out internationally. So it's a very exciting time. It's four years of work and $2.5 million of money it's got into this tech platform. But if it takes, then the idea is we build a new gold standard of resume, which is verifiable in real time.
That's brilliant. That is brilliant. Erik, you mentioned friction. Can you tell me about, sort of from the perspective of a company that might be looking to make that process a little smoother? I mean, we're seeing the great resignation right now. I'm in a position to hire people. I've been hiring people all year, and I got to say, it's not been easy, especially during sort of the remoteness of everything. It's been additional layers have been added to the process of hiring. And timelines are tough because candidates are usually looking at 2 or 3 offers at the same time. So if your company's slower to present that offer, you're often losing out. So maybe talk to us a little bit about efficiency and how your system can help with that.
So I was also really lucky in the early stages of this to work with Paul Parisi, who at the time was a general manager of PayPal, and now is coincidentally, and good for us, he's the Canadian lead for the Silicon Valley Bank. So when our seed round comes up in a couple months, Paul, I'll be calling you. But Paul was fully on board with what it was we're doing, because he had said, look, we just hired we're just about to hire a chief compliance officer. And I won't name the name of the background company, but it's one of the big 5 background checking company. And he said we made an offer to this guy, and we put it to the background checker. And this guy's the chief of compliance, so he's pretty well as clean as they come. But at the 3-week point, when we were waiting for the background check to come back, the chief compliance officer said to Paul, he said, look, I'm out of this. I got other things on the go, and this is taking too long. It's a pain in my ass. And that's the friction I'm talking about. And if this person had used a digital work passport, if it was deployed to him by Paul earlier in the process, which it can done it, and then it can be locked, so that in the US, there's a law called ban the box. And ban the box is that you can't actually do a check on anyone until an offer is made, or it's considered discriminatory.
Okay.
So by having the candidate be able to retrieve the information during the process and basically have it locked so that it can only be viewed at the time of job offer, it's queued up. And we actually have a patent on this. We call it queue before view, but it's basically the use of blockchain technology within the recruitment process. And there'd be 0 wait time. So that 3 weeks, that candidate frustration, it's anxiety ridden. If it's a recruitment agency, if it's an employer, or if it's a candidate themselves, they're like, why is this taking so long? The hiring manager's pissed off because it's taking forever, and they just want to get that person into the job. HR is sweating because they might lose the placement, and it's just a battle around. So we've taken that, and this is what I like about the system. We're not fixing something and improving it by 10 or 20%, right? We're changing it. It's called disruptive technology for a reason. It's because it takes 3 weeks, and it takes that down to nothing. It takes that down to instant verification. That's just at the background check stage, but there's a lot more to the ecosystem. So we also have a tech that's a psychometric assessment that's has over 1 billion data points of AI that we use to be able to, in 30 years and 30 million people that have taken the assessment, we can benchmark that. And instead of using a psychometric assessment at the end of the process, we give it away for free. So $100 assessment now is nothing. And you can use it as a filtration mechanism at the beginning of the hiring process. So every applicant, and our success has shown that about 60% of applicants do the pack finder. So it takes out the tire kickers, but it also provides employers and recruiters the ability to see if these guys are built for what it is they want them to do. And it can rank them on over 500 different jobs. And the employer, it benchmarks that are proven in terms of accurately predicting performance. And then at the end of it, the employer actually has the ability to benchmark their own top performers and use their own personal benchmarks against people that are coming into the system. And so that's the filtration component, right? So we're targeting both. There's the filtration, which is time consuming. There's the interview process, which now becomes easier because you don't have to interrogate candidates around did you actually do this? Tell me about the experience of doing it. It's done and it's verified at the beginning of the process. And then there's no wait at the end of the process for the background check. So we think that it can actually improve the speed by 80% and for time to hire. And that was kind of a guesstimation I pulled out of my ass based on experience of placing thousands of candidates with Magnus. But it was a guess. The cool part was when Manpower showed us their data based on real hours of thousands of recruiters, their guess was the exact same 80% time saving.
So you mentioned Covey and the fact that you look to resources in terms of books or sourcing information on on your journey of improvement and development and growth. And I'm curious. So if we combine that with the fact that from your business interests as well as your own personal needs, you're a leader hiring leaders. You're a leader looking for leaders. Mm. Through all of that, through all of your experience in the search, in terms of your own journey and all that, what are those, top 2 or 3 critical, components of leadership that you think are in today's world must-haves?
That's a really good question, because I look at it, and I've done a lot of research on this too, about leadership in today and leadership in the past. And management and leadership are not the same things necessarily. I think there's underlying values that the leader has, whether they're managing teams or whether they're running a company and going at 100 miles an hour. So first I want to address, I think, what's the most important thing for leaders in today's environment and what's going to make the difference for leaders in the next decade. So for now, I would say that, and you've got all your buzzwords, right? You've got all your your emotional quotients and I'm not big on that stuff and the cliches. But I think that, I think humility is really important for a leader. I think, and there's really bad leaders out there, or that have the title of leader. You can lead from anywhere within an organization. It has to do with how willing you are to help, and how much you care about your people. And I've been told that, when your company gets to 100 million, that matters less and less. And it's more about kind of bottom line. I think that you always got to care about the people that are in front of you. And that's what a good leader does. If you have high competency and a lot of wisdom, then that can be shared. And I think that just comes with time and experience. But what I think is going to make the leaders of tomorrow is this kind of cool concept of adaptability quotient. And I've written a couple of things on that. Mm-hmm. So it's not only how fast you can learn new skills, but it's how fast you can unlearn what you think you know. As soon as people become stuck to principles or things that they've learned, and say that this is the way it is, that's when they get old, right? And that's when what you think no longer is relevant to the future. And whether we know it or not, stuff is moving way faster than we can actually calculate or compute in our brains. And I I heard this a couple of years ago, and I love it, and I believe it, and I share it when I can, is that our brains evolved over, tens of thousands, millions of years as a species. And we evolved only to be able to see things on a linear basis, which is why we can't tell why things seem to move so much faster when we're getting older, right? Mm-hmm. They just do. I asked my grandpa, who's 92, the other day, I'm like, so now I know why when seniors just sit on their porch, it's because when they're looking, the world is just going like this, right? And it's all this calculation between how much time you've had on the planet and how old you are, right? And I think that, or I know that we're moving at an exponential pace right now in terms of technology and advancement, and we can't see it. So those who are able to adapt quickly and unlearn things and learn new skills, those will be the leaders. Those will be the people that continue to adapt, and people will follow.
What is something you used to believe that you no longer believe, and why did you change your mind?
Oh, there's so many, man. There's so many. So I would say,
Which, by the way, that
yeah,
is probably the best
yeah,
answer. Like,
yeah,
if you just start with, oh, there's so many things, I'm like,
yeah,
it's great. That's
yeah,
fantastic.
yeah. I'd be revealing a lot about myself and my kind of personal life on a lot of these when I answer that. But I guess why not? So I grew up as a scientist, probably like you guys, right? So it was all about being able to prove things. And there's a lot of things that are not provable, and there's a lot of universal power that is not provable. And so a belief in a higher power was something that I did not have as a kid, and now I do. And so I think that's a big one. That's also a topic of conversation going for hours. But another one, I believe that for a very long time that I could drink in moderation. So I come from a long line of alkies, and it was something that I tried to do for a very long time, and kind of the music industry put me over the edge. So in November, I won't have had a drink for like 15 years.
Wow.
And that changed my life. And believe me, that belief was not an easy one to come to, that I just can't drink anymore, right? Just in terms of my kind of neurotic thinking and behavior, it was the best way to relieve the squirrels that were there. But those squirrels are there for a reason, and now I've kind of put them to use in good ways. So I don't depress my central nervous system the way I used to.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you for sharing that. No, it's absolutely great. The higher being concept, spirituality.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about spirituality in leadership.
Mm-hmm. Well, I can speak a little bit about my journey with that, and then I guess what resonates from the belief system that you acquire over that practice, and how that affects the people around you. I guess my experience, and it's been a seeking journey for me. I'm a seeker, right? I'm innately curious, and I want to solve problems and figure things out all the time. And that's something that there's no real answer to, other than it is or it is not, right? And whatever that is, I'm not a big religious person, but I do believe that there's power that comes from within, and that can be channeled. And whether it's augmenting your neurochemistry from different rates of breathing and body. But it also puts you in a meditative state that can kind of connect you to this outside channel or inside channel that we're getting further and further away from in our daily lives. And for me, that place is calm. And for me, that place is oneness with everything else. And I think that with leadership, if you have that approach, you resonate at a different level, and people come towards that. And that is not my natural disposition. My natural disposition, Peter, when you see that, and you see my Pathfinder results, you'll see just how prone I am to conflict, and that I bring it into my life. And it's been this constant struggle between the two of, getting out of myself and being at peace. And I find it in different things. Like, I used to be a gym monkey. I'd go to the gym every time just to get my endorphins up and try and clear my head. And that was addictive too for me. So, I took a long break from being, I'm in the worst shape I've ever been, but mentally I'm in the best state I've ever been. So everyone has their own demons, right? And one man's problem is whatever it is that's challenging that person. It's as big as whatever is challenging someone else, right? It's what it consumes them. It's what takes all of their energy and space. And if you can help them work through that, that's good leadership. And that's spirituality is a big part of that, I think.
So, when you were talking about jargon earlier, and I think that my own personal perspective of mindfulness has a jargon kind of sense right now to me. I think there is some legitimate, powerful work out there in this umbrella that people are calling mindfulness, because I think there are components of it, and I've spent a little bit of time trying to get a little deeper into it. But to me, it's, I'd love to hear your perspective, because I think I have a suspicion that you've thought about this a bit.
And if I may, because I didn't anticipate we were going to go here, and I love this area. So the one thing I was just throwing before you give your answers, I know you've talked about the space between stimulus and response, which I have to tell you, Eric, I wrote a song on this concept. So that's how into it I am. So maybe if that gives you broader context for the answer.
That a boy. Wow. Okay, so mindfulness cliche. People market the crap out of it and create these like prefab. Listen, if anyone could get something out of it towards that end goal, which I think is selflessness.
Got it.
I think that is the key to mindfulness. I think that is the key to great leadership. And because people are preoccupied with their past, their future, that's where our mind stays 90% of the time, not where we should be, which is here and now. And they're always focused on themselves. So if you can step out of that, that's a real big exercise. And that's a real key to being happy and to being a good leader. The best leaders of all gave their lives for their people, right? The ultimate sacrifice. So
many.
So on a LinkedIn post that you had up in the past year, I think you mentioned some article that cited that 90% of our society are wired to be comfortable, and I think that made you a little bit uneasy because you're like, what about the other 10%?
Yeah.
And you called this other group hunters, which I'm not even sure if the original article cited, but that was your definition. So talk to me about this group, and under the perspective of, one, if you are one of these people, what does that mean? And two, if you're hiring, you're in a position to maybe add people to your team, how do you think about those hunters?
Well, listen, man, I really appreciate the fact that you actually read my posts. That's cool. So I can't take credit for that. So that's from Dr. Dougie Bracken. So, and he comes from this concept of like elite athletes and elite entrepreneurs. They come from the same type of makeup, and it's genetic. His concept is that this is a genetic phenomenon that has been weeded out of society over years when agriculturalism started. What happens is we became farmers. We got lazy. Things became easy. We could get crops for the entire year. We didn't have to go out and get it every single day, right? And for some, I guess it's been bred out, but some people remain hunters, and that is their makeup. And I believe that I'm one of those people. And I believe most entrepreneurs and most elite athletes are those people. And it's a drive to go out and get. So they're different to manage, though, in terms of coachability, right? Because they'll be harder to coach. It's like a stallion, right? It's like a wild stallion. You have to break them, right? But not in a bad way, a torturous way. But connecting with them at that level, they have different wants. They have different. You need different reward mechanisms. You need to provide a different level of autonomy and trust. And I don't know the magic equation in terms of managing people, man. Like I've had successes and I've had failures. I've had people that have been with me for 8 years and people that have been with me for 8 hours. A lot of it has to do with how you connect and the mission of the company, and if people are in alignment with that, and if they can produce along with what that mission is.
Yep. Lightning round. This is the most exciting part of the program.
Okay.
Yes. Eric, number one, if someone wrote a biography of your professional journey to date, what would be the title?
Chaos.
Ooh, love it.
That's good. That's an intriguing one because I would want to watch that. or read it. I mean, okay, so that just gave away my next question. If this biography gets turned into a movie, who plays you in the lead role? And I have a suspicion I might know who it might be because I think you and I have the same obsession with this person. But who do you think it would be?
Oh man, I don't know a lot of actors' names, unfortunately. But I do like some guys, and I just gotta. I don't have a direct answer, but I do have to give so much props to Netflix, because I watch very few English movies anymore. It's like just this incredible world of talent that's out there. So I'd say give it to some guy out of Spain. I don't know his name. I don't know his name, but I just know that, like,
Antonio Banderas?
Definitely not.
I don't think he's Spanish anyway. So,
Who are you thinking, Peter?
Well, I did quite a bit of research. So I found out that among the many things that we share, Stephen Covey is the first self-help book that someone gave to you that kind of changed your life. Same thing. Kinesiology is the background. Also Sylvester Stallone obsession. So I was growing up in communist Poland as a kid, and that was one of the first movies I saw was I think it was Rocky, and then followed very closely by First Blood. I was way too young to see it, but it blew my mind. And then I was painting. I'm sharing too much here. I was painting abs onto my Lego man because I was like, this is what I want to be when I grow up. Like, that was my role model from life. So I understand you need a time machine because he's obviously much older than you, so that wouldn't work very well. But that's where I thought you were going to go.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Still
we're just going to make that the answer. That's all.
Yeah.
Okay. Next.
For Erik, this is perfect. Yeah. This is the first time this actually made sense. So this works really well. So, Erik, if you were to write a song, sort of an anthem for leadership, what would be the chorus line that you would repeat throughout that song that you think leaders of today really need to hear?
Awesome, man. I know I have an idea for a podcast, for another one. If I'm ever asked back, maybe I'll write a song. I haven't been writing in a long time. We do a leadership one. That's the thing. People don't want to hear about good stuff. They want to hear about bad stuff all the time.
It's true.
Yeah, it's crazy. But chorus line for a song that defines leadership. That's going to sound so cheesy, man.
But think about most choruses. They tend to be, if you take away the melody, Oh, give us that one. That one.
Yeah,
that's the one
we want.
Oh, it was adapt. No.
Well, that's it. That makes sense given the conversation we've been having.
Okay, cool.
I thought you were just gonna scream chaos, like a bunch of
times. No, you don't want that in leadership. You don't want that. You want to be able to manage it.
Yeah. Okay.
I love it.
Adapt. Got it. And then our final question, and again, I have a sneaky suspicion I know the answer to this because we already talked about this a number of times, but maybe surprise us here. What book have you gifted the most to people on your team or colleagues or people that you're mentoring that you think is a useful read for people on this leadership journey we're all on?
Yeah, it's 7 Habits for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so that's also the one that I've gifted the most. In fact, when people start on my team, I literally just send that to them. That's like, now you understand half the stuff that I do. That's straight out of that book. Erik, where can people find you online?
So Erik Simins, just if you look in LinkedIn, you can just tag me at ERIK SIMINS. ErikSimins.com is a new site. Now that we just got the music one down, I had to call the label and guys, can you just stop exploiting my music? It's 20 years old. So they gave me back my website. I didn't have the rights to my name website, but that was nice enough. And of course, workwolf.com is a way to connect with my team.
Perfect. Thank you.
Go ahead. Erik, thank you so much for your time. This was exceptional. Tremendous learning for me, and I know for Peter because I watched his head not 64 times.
It's bad. I got to control that.
And really and honestly, it's been a delight, and I'm looking forward to continuing our conversation offline as we go forward. So have a wonderful evening, and thanks again for being here.
My pleasure, guys. Thanks very much for the opportunity.